Alright, I've kind of touched on this a little bit on the video where I talked about what I did not like about X and Y. I'm really getting the feeling that in general, video games are just getting a little too easy. If you played earlier games, like those first few games that came out on those very first few games, like I remember when I played the remake of the first Metroid, I couldn't even get past Kraid. It was very cryptic. You had to have super technique just to get through a certain part of the level. I couldn't touch it. I couldn't touch it. Then a friend of mine told me about a game called God Hand. It's on the PS2, so it's not that old, but it's not recent. And it's a constructed combo fighting game. Died 15 times or so on the first level on normal, not hard, on normal. And it's a really funny game and it's a really cool game, but it was hard work. The older Resident Evil games, hard work. This is about every older game, even though the graphics weren't like super impressive, they were good enough to where you could clearly see what you were doing. The games were cryptic. They made you look for clues, for items. They made you think about how you were going to use certain things. You couldn't just waste your items. You couldn't waste all your stuff. You actually had to think about what you were going to do. You actually had to have strategy for RPGs. When you played certain shooter games, you couldn't just fire blind. You had to actually know. You had to, some of them you had finite ammo. You had to save it. For fighting games, you actually had to learn how to use a character right. You couldn't just spam the crap out of everyone in air juggle. That wasn't how older fighting games worked. You actually had to know what you were doing at least a little bit. But like in general, a lot of games have changed in the sense that they're just kind of getting too easy. They're spoon feeding you. It makes it pretty easy for you to find everything. Easter eggs are probably one of the only things that are kind of still difficult finding like there will be a set of things and you have to find them all. You guys know what Easter eggs are. Well, if you don't, now you do. When they have a set of things that you're supposed to look for, and when you collect all of them, usually something happens. But even then, the freaking gold Skulltulas in the original Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, 100 of them. There was a meme I saw where they said, collect all 100, ain't nobody got time for that. But seriously, that's what I'm talking about. See? Like, let's not even get started on Legend of Zelda. I think Legend of Zelda stepped it up, though, because I've seen, like, I have not had the luxury of being able to play the newer ones because I don't have a Wii. But I have seen my friends play games like Skyward Sword. Zelda seems to be one of the few things that's been stepping it up. But I played the original Legend of Zelda, and I had to check a walkthrough every once in a while to figure out where the dungeons were. It wasn't incredibly hard. It was not incredibly easy either. I could never clear Adventure of Link. I got to like the 7th temple. I couldn't find the key to get to the 8th one. I got stuck after that. I was so mad. But yeah. But no, like, that's a very good example of a title where they kept things difficult, but it was always worth it. If you had to go through a walkthrough or you had to ask a friend how to do something, that was probably like mandatory. You were somebody that could clear a Zelda game without any help, you were a badass. It was that simple. And you still are. But I don't know. In general, I think a lot of games are just kind of making it easy. Like Resident Evil, the first, when I played Resident Evil 4, don't get me wrong, I loved that game. It was amazing. But it wasn't very hard, and I'm not a very good shot. I'm mediocre at best at shooter games, especially first-person shooters. Like, I suck at Call of Duty. I won't even touch it. But after I cleared that first game, Mercenaries was like the only thing that was actually kind of difficult when you got to get the hand cannon. I did clear it, though. I cleared every stage with 5 stars. I think my hardest one was with doing that with Leon. Like, Hunk was easy. You just headshot someone and do the neck snap thing. So that was kind of hard. And playing on professional mode was a pain in the behind. I died like 127 times, I think. Or it was over 125 times I died just to get that freaking laser cannon. Worth it! But see, that was the point. Once you got that freaking laser cannon, the final boss, you're dead. No, you don't even have to be aiming it directly at the boss. If it's in the general range of the shot blast, not the full-on laser, just like the freehand shot, he dies instantly. That laser was an instant kill, but it took a minute to charge, so you were vulnerable. You had to be behind. You had to be out of the enemy's way to get that laser off. And it was a laser. It was a straightforward laser. If you weren't aiming, it didn't spread very far. It went far, but it did not spread as much as it appeared to. So that was worth it made professional mode worth something, but that was a dick. But then Resident Evil 5, every mode except professional mode was not that bad. I could not clear professional mode on Resident Evil 5. You get touched once, you're dead, and your NPC, that NPC is like not even possible. You have to have an actual person with you. I'll give him credit. He stepped that up. But then my friend had Resident Evil 6, and he told me, I haven't played it, so I can't 100% vouch for this, so I'd like you all to comment below if this is true. There are now basically perks in Resident Evil 6 that basically, like, temporarily you have a buff. There are perks in Resident Evil 6. No. That sounds right there. That sounds like they're making it too easy. I mean, having a super broken-ass weapon with infinite ammo once you can't clear a certain part of the game. Point being, you gotta clear the game to get it. You're not getting it off the hip. So that was one of my problems with Resident Evil 5. You knew what you were doing. You get that Gatling gun like before like in the second chapter. You knew what you were doing. All you had to do was max out the first machine gun that you get, which you can get on stage 1. And then Gatling gun pops up in the shop for 50 grand. You sell back your machine gun, you get a little bit of gold, you buy the Gatling gun, you have an infinite weapon before you even get halfway through the game. I mean, yeah, only Chris could use it, and yeah, it was pretty hard to aim, but a Gatling gun with infinite ammo is still a motherfucking Gatling gun with motherfucking infinite ammo before game clear. But them giving you perks, that's ridiculous. No, that's too fucking easy. Then fighting games, everybody started fighting cheap. I'm not saying everybody does this, but I know a lot of people air juggle in fighting games, and I'm like, I don't even want to play them anymore. I was never the best fighting game player, but I was never a cheap air juggler. I never did that. I didn't care how pissed off I was. I would never resort to something that cheap. But now everyone does it. It's like common gameplay. And then apparently, like if you're playing online, someone will cut the game off the moment that you start doing that, and before they get to do it to you. I'm like, that's retarded. What happened to playing the game and using combos and special moves and everything? What happened to fighting the fight instead of instead of blindly spamming someone stupid? So, I don't know. I feel like in general, games are starting to get a little too easy. This is not true for everything. But here's a really good example. If they don't step their game up in fucking Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 13 had an interesting story and everything, graphics were amazing, but it was a fucking joke. It was an absolute fucking joke. You spam the X button and everything dies. Bullshit. I mean, even the Gambit set thing in Final Fantasy 12, if you didn't have a good Gambit set, you could still get your ass kicked. All it meant is that you had to plan a strategy, then you auto-launched that strategy. But if something went wrong, you still had to manually change your strategy up in the midst of the battle. Even that wasn't that bad. It was something that was convenient, but still required you to have a thought planned out strategy. 13 didn't. Like once I maxed out my Crystarium, I could take a long Gui off without a problem. All my Gambits, paradigms were just 3 of every job. 3 Sentinels, 3 healers, etc. And that was how I did all my fights. I mean, I knew exactly what to do. Oh, the long Gui starts off with Ultima. Go in with the Tortoise Sentinel. Go in with the Tortoise paradigm. All 3 Sentinels. Okay, then heal, then attack, then heal, then attack. Up, fell down. Spam. It was a joke. By the second time it hit the ground, it was dead. And then Mithridates. I don't know if that's how you pronounce the last Undying's name, but that's what I've begun calling it. That's what I named my Majins in Disgaea games. Mithridates, whatever the final Undying thing was. He was annoying, but he was a joke, because I had maxed out my Crystarium by the time I got there. I mean, you guys can kind of say, oh yeah, well you maxed out your characters, of course it's easy. That doesn't mean anything! You can max out your characters in other Final Fantasy games and still get your ass kicked by the secret bosses. Level didn't mean shit back then. But all I'm saying, I'm not telling them to get super duper Nintendo level hard again, But I kind of just want there to be more challenge. And I want you guys to tell me what you think. And I want you guys to tell me, do you feel this is the same way? Give me an example. And give me an example of a newer game other than the D Soul series that stepped the game up, that made it more difficult, that made you work for that game clear, that made you work for the extra parts of the game. If any of you have played Demon Souls or Dark Souls, you already know. Demon Souls was an amazing game. That game, that's what I kind of want, something like that to come back in. Then we need more of that.